Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. For those who don't know me, my name is Leo, and this is.
Diana.
We are the leaders of CDV Youth, and we're here today to go ahead and talk about the word so that we can learn about it, meditate in it, and then make sure that we walk in the word.
Yes.
All right. So, at the very end, we'll have a question for you guys. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And what's our we have what, a Starbucks gift card?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. For the first person who answers the question. Now, before we get started, we're going to go ahead and pray. Today, we're going to be talking about Genesis 8. This is right after Noah builds the ark and after the 40 days and 40 nights of rain. Okay? So, Lord, thank you for having us here. Thank you for the revelation of this word. Please give us your wisdom. Thank you for just the hunger that you give us to get to know you more and more. And please allow this word to get into our hearts, into our minds, into our feet so that we can walk in it. And all the glory be to you. All right, guys.
Amen.
So we're going to dive right in. Can I have you read Genesis 8, 1 and
Yes.
2?
8, 1 and 2. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and livestock with him in the boat. He sent a wind to blow across the earth, and the flood waters began to recede. The underground waters stopped flowing, and the torrential rains from the sky were stopped.
All right. So before we continue, this is right after the 40 days and 40 nights of rain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Noah is picked because of out of all of the people in the earth, he was the only one that was really righteous.
Mm-hmm.
And he was invited to go ahead and build this gigantic ark and to go ahead and put two of every animal in it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about it, I think the measurements that they were talking about was like 3 football fields long.
Oh, wow.
Imagine how gigantic. I mean, if you have a stadium by your house, wherever you're at, imagine like two of those side by side, and that's how big this ark was.
2 or 3.
Well, technically, probably closer to two because then there's that space where like all of the people sit. Yes. So let's just say conservatively two
The
stadiums
actual
back to
stadium.
back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just imagine like what it would take to build that. And
Mm-hmm.
it took a very long time. So Noah is seen as someone very loyal and he decides to go ahead and do it, right? And he was actually welcomed to go ahead and tell everybody else, "Hey, live a righteous life. Come with us. There's going to be a flood. The God is going to end the entire world,"
Yeah,
right?
he gave them an opportunity.
And nobody besides his
Nobody took
family
him up on it.
took him up on
Mm-hmm.
the decision. So it rains for 40 days and 40 nights, and what God does is he eliminates the human race pretty much.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of dark.
let's think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever we study Noah's Ark, it's we're like little kids and like
The animals
yeah,
in the
and
boat. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. We're getting together and we're like coloring the boat and we're coloring the animals or we're making like a little puppet show and it's very like innocent. But what's going on is people are dying. There's probably like dead bodies all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the end of the world. There's
Yeah.
animals, there's all types of stuff. So this is a really grim sight. So let's put ourselves in this really like dark time. And when it rains, it's usually not very sunny,
Mm-hmm.
right? So now it's all cloudy
Mm-hmm.
and dark and raining for 40 days and 40 nights. And the only way that you can identify whether it's day or night is usually with the use of what?
The sun.
The sun. Okay? So they're seeing days and nights where it's just dark. All right? It might be lighter during the day, but it's still very dark.
Yes.
So we live here in Vegas. If I go back to Chicago or Michigan and we just visit for like a couple of days and it's dark and gloomy, or even if it's dark and gloomy here for a couple of days, I start getting cranky.
Mm-hmm.
I start getting a little irritated just because your body like likes that sun,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're used to it all the time.
Yeah.
So imagine not seeing it for 40 days. It might be cool for the first couple of days. Oh, thank God that we're alive, and everybody else, like, you know,
Made their choice.
that sucks. And now I'm dealing with all these animals in this ark, but it's dark. And let's really look at this first sentence in Genesis 8:1. So it's dark, it's been raining for 40 days and 40 nights. You're adrift in this gigantic sea. You can't
Mhm.
even see
There's nothing but
um,
water.
anything else. There's like no land masses anywhere. It's said that the water covered even the highest mountains. Um, so let's see what it says. It says, "But God remembered Noah and all of the wild animals and the livestock with him in the boat." So it says, God remembered Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Does this mean that God forgot Noah?
Could seem that way, but I wouldn't think so.
I think we all have points in our lives where we feel like a little bit adrift, or everything's really dark
Mm-hmm.
for days and nights and days and nights, and then it starts feeling hopeless,
Yep.
and you're told by your parents or your pastor or your friends that you're really meant for a lot,
Mm-hmm.
that your purpose is huge, but then you have this streak where you you're told that things will be good for you in the future, but now you're just stuck in the middle. You're stuck in this valley where there's like nothing else that you see and everything is dark. Okay? But you're going out there in faith. After
Mhm.
40 days and 40 nights, he feels adrift,
Mm-hmm.
and God actually reveals to Noah that he still remembers him. So it's not that he forgot, it's that understandably Noah felt forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
And the word says God remembered Noah.
Right.
So what I want you guys to really know is that at points where you're going, like right before you do something huge and impactful, you're gonna hit these points where you're just gonna feel like there's nothing going on, everything is bad, and there's just no hope.
I was just reading yesterday, that time where you feel like that, referred to it like the wasteland. You have to go through the wasteland, and sometimes we feel like we're forgotten, like there's no hope. But that's it's still an important time, just as important, because that's what's going to allow you to prepare you to grow for what's coming.
Sure, that builds that faith. That
Mm-hmm.
is you continuing on with the habits. That's you feeding the animals. That's you taking care of them. That's you watching over your family. That's you taking care of yourself while it's raining for 40 days and 40
Mm-hmm.
nights. That's the gritty work that you have to do, whether you're studying or you're going to work every day, or you're waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning, going to work till noon, and then going to school after that, and then from school going to study, and doing that for years, which is something that we did.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll see how God recompenses Noah. Okay, so it says the underground water stopped flowing, and the torrential rain from the sky stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go ahead and continue in at 3.
So the flood waters gradually receded from the earth. After 150 days, exactly 5 months from the time the flood began, the boat came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. 2.5 months later, the waters continued to go down. Other mountain peaks became visible. After another 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven.
All right, let's stop right there. So then what do we see? We see that the flood waters gradually receded. So you start seeing some hope. You start seeing something. But then it's like after 150 days, which is 5 months from the time the flood began, the water came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. So 5 months later, there's still water all over the
Everywhere.
place.
That's a lot of
Okay?
to dry
So
up.
you just hit a point where you're like, I don't know if God is even still with me. You get the confirmation, hey, God is still with you. The floodwaters have stopped. I mean, it's not raining anymore. That's great. Now wait another 5 months. Now wait another 5 months. Be adrift for another 5 months. 2.5 months later, the waters continue to go down over the mountain peaks. They became visible. So now the mountain peaks become visible. So you see a glimmer of hope,
Mm-hmm.
right? You see something. You see kind of some progression. Maybe um, you're almost finishing up school and you start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
It's your senior year, or you start getting some callbacks from some job interviews or things like that. Like you start seeing something happen after 5 months and after another 2.5 months. All right. And then it says, you want to go ahead and read in 6?
And
Sorry.
6. After another 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the boat and released a raven.
So they hadn't even opened a window. They hadn't even
That's
opened a
40 days
window.
later.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's 40 days after that.
Mm-hmm.
And he releases a raven. And what does this raven do?
The bird flew back and forth until the flood waters on the earth had dried up. He also released a dove to see if the water had receded and it could find dry ground.
So he sends out a raven, right? What we need to know about a raven is they're not really made for like long distance flights.
Okay.
All right? So a raven is sent out first to see, hey, like let's see if you can find anything out there.
Mm-hmm.
So he sends the shorter distance guy and nothing. The poor
Just goes
bird
back
just
and forth.
flies back and forth because he's like, I don't see anything.
There's
I
nowhere
don't
to
see
go.
anything.
Mhm.
I don't see anything. Let me back in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And then he sends this dove, and doves are known to go ahead and fly a little further, right? So then the dove gets released, and the same thing happens. Let's go ahead and continue out on 9.
So, but the dove could not find no place to land because the water still covered the ground. So it returned to the boat. And Noah held out his hand and drew the dove back inside.
All right. So the dove goes, comes back,
Nothing.
still nothing. All right. And let's continue on 10.
After waiting another 7 days, Noah released the dove again. This time the dove returned to him in the evening with a fresh olive leaf in its beak.
Oh, another little bit of
Yay.
hope. So 7 days after that, a week after that, then he sends another dove. And does he get the answer? Maybe not quite.
Response.
He gets a response. And this is what we need to see is that sometimes we're going to be in this valley where everything sucks and we start seeing little glimmers of hope. But they might not be 100% confirmations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
And when it comes to the word, we need to make sure that we're consistently building these habits of like Noah was feeding the animals and taking care of his family. We have to feed ourselves and take care of ourselves with his word, right? And things are still going to suck. They might even suck worse.
Mm-hmm.
They might even suck worse. Why? Because it's going to be that period of that raining. The enemy is going to come and attack you. We talked about the enemy last time,
Mm-hmm.
how we need to give him the credit that he's due, because he sees you getting stronger in the word and he's like, I got to get him before he becomes strong and he can really truly oppose me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're going to be going through these time periods where you start feeling like, oh, that's great. I just got rid of my, gaming addiction. But then you fall back, right? Oh, that's great. I just got rid of my addiction with, needing to have a boyfriend or girlfriend at all times,
Mm-hmm.
or just any type of like addiction to sweets or maybe drugs or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have these big revelations, but there could also be downfalls,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what these periods of time mean in our lives. All right? And then where were we on 11?
Yes.
Okay.
So 11.
Oh,
This time
sorry. Go ahead.
with the olive leaf and speak. So the Noah knew that the flood waters were almost gone.
So Noah had hope. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
they're almost gone.
He waited another 7 days and then released the dove again. This time it did not come back.
So what is going on here? Oh, this is even better because before you had something. You had like some kind of tactile evidence. So maybe you start seeing some real evidence like your the people that stayed away from you during certain times start coming back with you and you're just like, "Oh wow, like I'm building something." Or you start building connections with people that are like-minded, that are also in the word. But then there's time periods where it's like, "Oh wow, well, where are these guys? Like I call them and they're not there anymore. What's going on? Did they forget about me? Do they not like me anymore?" But then we'll see what happens in 13.
Noah was now 601 years old. On the first day of the new year, 10.5 months after the flood began, the flood waters had almost dried up from the earth. Noah lifted back the covering of the boat and saw that the surface of the ground was drying. 2 more months went by, and at last the earth was dry.
So what we
Okay.
see,
Yeah.
so what we see is sometimes these friends are maybe out of town, or maybe they're planning this great outreach that they want you to be a part of, right? So it's like, yeah, they might stray away because they're working on bigger things, but just make sure that you have the right perspective and you don't just cut yourself off from them. So what happens here is instead of Noah losing hope and saying, "Man, this dove must have died, and that's why he didn't come back," he maintained his hope and his faith in God, and he started seeing the results. Everything started to dry up. And then God still makes him wait another 2 months. And it took over a year for all of this process to happen. So at the very beginning, there's his faith on trying to accomplish this massive goal of building this gigantic ark. And then we have him actually building, I don't remember how long that took. I knew at some point, but I don't remember. Um, but he builds this gigantic ark, and then it rains for 40 days and 40 nights. People are dying everywhere, right? The ark is probably banging up against dead bodies. Let's really think about it, right? And then there's just darkness for 40 days and 40 nights. There might be a glimmer of something, and then we just see months and months pass by. We see a little bit of hope here, a little bit of hope there. We see maybe Noah losing a little faith or being scared that he's being forgotten. But then we have confirmation from God that says that he's not, that he's remembered. And we need to know that we are remembered at all times. But sometimes God allows that distance so that you can build that relationship. Because from what I've seen in the Word is that God wants you to desire Him. Okay, He wants you to desire Him. He wants to make sure that you are looking to Him, because that's why He gave us free will. He could have made us perfect, but what He wanted to accomplish with giving us free will is, I'm going to go ahead and allow you to have your own thoughts, and I want you to love me, not because I'm making you love me, but because you recognize what I've done in your life. Absolutely. And that's just like having like a little puppy or having a child, and when he actually does what you tell him to do, you're so proud of him because he decided through his own free will to follow your instructions. So that's what I wanted to talk about. We're going to feel forgotten every once in a while, but we need to know that even through all of these flood waters and the fact that sometimes we lose hope altogether, and it's just darkness, and there's points where we get tiny glimmers of hope and then it just extinguishes because you turn around and you're like, oh, there's flood water. And you start seeing peaks in the mountains and you're just like, oh, but there's flood water everywhere. And then you start seeing like a little piece of stick that a dove brought you back, but there's flood water everywhere until you finally start seeing dry ground. And then he makes you wait another 2 months. And that's when the earth is dry. So we need to be aware that things take time, that you are never truly forgotten. And the only way that you're going to remember that is by getting into his word. Because you got to believe that with this year and some change that he's waiting in this ark, that he's getting reinforcements from God and he's feeling remembered because he takes his time to go ahead and connect with him. So that is all I wanted to share with you guys.
Awesome.
A pleasure. Do you have a question of the day for us?
How long was Noah and his family in the ark?
Wow, very, very long time. I never realized how long
Me
all this
neither.
was. It's
Yeah.
bananas. But always a pleasure. If you guys were to ever need anything, please leave it in the chat. We are hoping for February the 20th to get together and actually do a fellowship at Sunset Park. If you guys are interested, please go ahead and reach out to us. We're going to be feeding the homeless, doing a little worship, and just spending a good time together. Yeah, we love you guys.
Yep.
Anything else? Yeah.